also somebody who's coming out of the left, and I've been expelled out of socialist parties for being too heretical, for being too, I don't know, trying to hybridize the left with elements of capitalism. And I don't know if this makes me a sellout or if I'm now to the right of socialists, but I don't really care because the economy is falling apart and we need to do something. So what I've done is, like, I created this article and I've talked it out with people, and a lot of people don't like it, and some people do like it. But here's how it would work, okay? It would be a hybrid of a commercial venture capital fund that invests in companies and expects a return. But in this case, it would also be a hybrid of left values of solidarity, community-oriented, community focus, environmentalism, like I said. So this is the solution that kills two problems with one stone. We do have a global warming problem in this country. We do have other forms of environmental degradation. I could go on about the environment and the myriad of problems that we're experiencing. But we also have a problem with unemployment. So if we had this fund, it would actually help the unemployment problem and help the environmental problem at the same time. Here's how it would work. This fund would invest capital, a major amount, let's say 2 or 3 million, in an entity that qualifies, that meets the criteria: public interest, environmental effect, employment of people. And let's say 1 out of 3 of these entities become successful and they grow. And either through their sales and cash flow, or maybe they're acquired by another company, or they even go public on the stock market, they grow fast and they're able in 3 or 4 years to return, to create a big return on investment. This is the way commercial venture capital works. They invest in a number of companies, and a percentage of those companies return. But they return in this explosive way because of growth and valuation that it more than makes up for all the different losses in the first round of funding. So let's say 2 out of 3 of your investments fail, but that's okay because 1 out of 3 returns and returns the capital into the fund 2 or 3-fold. So one of the charms of this program is that what I'm suggesting is you get it started, you capitalize it, you fund it with maybe the federal budget of 2009 or 2010, but eventually it should become self-sustaining because it's generating its own return on capital. Also, I want this thing to be decentralized. There's a lot of people out there that have a mistrust of the federal government for good reason. But in this case, I'm thinking the top 600 big towns and small cities and big cities of America. That's how we organize this. We organize this at the community level. And so that if you live in Austin, Texas, and you have an idea for a company and it meets the criteria, that you go to your corner office, which is basically like a bank or a credit union, and you go in and present the business plan, and maybe in a week or 2 you get an answer, and you are likely to get this funding, and there's certain guarantees that have to be met, and you have to make certain promises, you employ a certain amount of people. But this is direct injection of capital into the grassroots. This is not trying to salvage the already broken and cracked up and leaking all over the place financial system or the financiers. This is, again, it's somewhat heretical because it's the left and the right. It's free market, and it's also influenced by the politics of the left. And it's one of the things that people really like to talk about. But before we get into the discussion period, one of the third imperative, the third reason that we did this tour is to talk about 1,000% changes, 1,000% change in government transparency. Not because we expect this to happen overnight, but because we need to ask for it. It's what we've already been asking for as the 9/11 Truth Movement. Some of you are older than I am. Some of you were part of the JFK assassination Truth Movement. But I'm suggesting that we need a broad call for government transparency as a way to reassert the sovereignty of the citizenship over the out-of-control federal war state so that changes are made. Not just so that we have information, but that the information becomes well known, and the moral imperative that's inside of us all is awakened, and we all start demanding that we know the full truth about the U.S. federal protection of the 9/11 hijackers. We know the full truth about who killed the Kennedys, who killed Martin Luther King, whose holiday we celebrated yesterday, who killed Malcolm X, because all of those situations are shrouded in mystery, and yet the truth is not impartial. you scratch the surface, as we've seen in 9/11. You scratch the surface, and it's not like you're confronted with a myriad of theories and it's so confusing. That's what the liberals sometimes say, like, oh, well, the more we research this, the less we're going to know because there's so many theories out there. But I think we have realized that no, that we as a movement, as a democratic, grassroots, leaderless organization, we've had a lot of dialogue, we've worked it out over time, and have figured out that the truth is a vibrant thing that calls us to it. And sure, we've gone off in a couple of different directions, but as a movement, we have done something beautiful. We've articulated a more truthful counter-narrative. And I see a lot of hope around me. Just today on 9/11 Blogger, I read about probably one of the most least likely. Hello, welcome, have a seat. There's beer in the fridge. This is actually a note of hope. Somebody in Gators for 9/11 Truth, this Florida group, happened to send the Richard Gage DVD to the Assistant Director of Counterterrorism of the FBI, which, if you know your history of the FBI, this would be the least likely branch of the FBI to ever say anything or do anything, with David Frasca and Mike Rollins, and who were suppressing Colin Rowley, getting promoted into counterterrorism with FBI. But for some reason, and I don't know who this guy is, I can't really give you the full story here, but I have hope about this. For some reason, this Associate Director of Counterterrorism wrote a letter to this guy down in Florida and said...
Harold Save.
What's that?
Harold.
Save. We're from Florida.
Okay, right. Okay, good. He wrote a letter to Harold and said, thank you for the DVD. I did watch it. I found it to be well-sourced and well-documented, and it could lead to something else. That's what he implied. And I personally feel that maybe he knows that the White House, extreme proximity to the Saudis, to Saudi intelligence, the White House, who has been doing business with bin Laden since '78, is now out the door. And you can say what you want about Barack Obama. I agree that we need a left critique of Barack Obama. But when Barack Obama was confronted by the guys from We Are Change, he did say, "You're doing good work, and you need to keep it up." There's glimmers of hope out there that well, let me say this. I didn't vote for Barack Obama. I'm a Green Party guy. I voted for Cynthia McCain. Yay. But if we're promised change, then it's up to us to create a mass movement that presses for that change. We can't take any promise from a Democrat at face value anymore, post-Clinton, or post-Truman even. I could cite other Democrats that have bombed instead of answering the interests of the people. But I do know that real change comes from mass movements, right? Civil rights, women's suffrage, ending the war in Vietnam. Nixon didn't end the war in Vietnam because it was a good thing to do. He ended it because there was 1 million kids right outside of his door. And we know from the Nixon tapes how that rattled him and how he felt that he had better end the Vietnam War or it was going to end the rule of the U.S. ruling class in the United States of America. Yeah,